Nick, Andy, there's no other way to put it. Huge game in the Premier League this weekend. Massive one in the title race. The only remaining game between title contenders left this season for us to sink our teeth into. So let's get into it. City are 1 point behind Arsenal heading into this weekend. Obviously, the Gunners, top of the Premier League table, looking really good on so many levels. We'll discuss them a lot. Nick, your thoughts heading into this game? Obviously, City have a lot of injury concerns that we're not quite sure about yet. But that really kind of shows how closely these two teams are matched now, right? That we're really going to make our prediction and going to see how this game is going to go based on the availability of a couple of players. Arsenal really have closed this gap over the last, 6 to 8 months.
Yeah, look, it's the Spider-Man meme game. I've been talking about this with you guys for a little while. Every time I watch Arsenal now, since we discussed it, I see Rice in the Rodri role, and I see Odegaard getting the freedom that KDB got, and I see why David Raya is there to be an Ederson instead of a Joe Hart, and I'm not even making that along country lines. I think this is very much a who's going to outthink themselves. I think it's a manager's game, because if both teams go for it and let the players decide, then maybe it's Haaland who decides it, but it could be Saka, it could be anybody. If somebody tries to outthink themselves and it doesn't work, it could decide the title race. And so I can't wait to see what twist comes up.
Me too. I'll be there at the Etihad this weekend for PST, so really looking forward to providing analysis and live coverage from on site there. Andy, when we preview this game, obviously I mentioned that there the injury news is the big kind of discussion around it. For Man City, just some of the names that could be missing: Kevin De Bruyne, John Stones, Kyle Walker, Ederson, Manuel Akanji. These are key players, obviously, that have huge amounts of experience. But also, when we talk about Walker and Stones as well, really help City control things defensively and would nullify a lot of the threat that Arsenal have. And if those two guys are missing, then you can almost see formation change from Guardiola to try and deal with that and be more solid. It's pretty influential, right? Who's going to be available for this game? So what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, it's very important players that are injured. Very important to the way that City want to play. Ederson, obviously, in goal, and the things that he can do with the ball at his feet, that completely, and has changed in recent weeks. I think maybe we're not paying quite enough attention to the absence of Ederson and the way that City are able to build out and control games a little bit more. And so results have been a little bit tighter. They've been a little bit up and down. The performances have not exactly been what you would expect from Manchester City. What was the thing last year that completely unlocked them and sent them on the treble-winning run? It was John Stones becoming kind of the jack of all trades, the Swiss Army knife kind of guy right there in the middle of the field that could fill just a bunch of different roles. You need him to venture forward a bit. You need him to fall in back behind and cover and rotate. Like, he is just such an incredibly smart player that, you have a manager like Pep Guardiola. He figures exactly how to use a player like that. And so you take a couple of those guys away. I mean, Kyle Walker, the speed that he possesses means that City can take so many more threats or so many more chances going forward and try to overload on one side or get numbers forward, because Kyle Walker's always back there. He can always recover. He can always, snuff out whatever counterattacking chances going the other direction. And so I look at the specific players injured for City, and I really worry for them in this game, because it feels like the way that the game is going to be played, it's going to play right into Arsenal's hands, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to play the game quickly. They're going to be the ones that are a little bit more aggressive. I think we're going to have to see City much more reserved in this game, and we have not really seen that for years, especially under Pep, because they are just go, go, go. They dominate the game, and so it's going to look a little bit different, and yeah, I'm definitely leaning Arsenal in this one.
Wow, that's huge. It kind of makes sense because they beat City 1-0 earlier this season as well. Obviously, City were missing Rodri in that game, so that was a huge blow for them. But when I look back at that team as well, Pep did go for a back four that day. It didn't really work either. So I feel like maybe that, they're going to try, if Stones isn't available, to try and shoehorn someone in that role. And I think it could go wrong, especially when we've seen City be pretty susceptible on the counter-attack this season. I mean, Nick, when we look at Arsenal, Havertz has been excellent, right, in this kind of false nine role and just creating a lot of gaps for Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Trossard to expose. Do you think that's how Arsenal can really get at City? And again, I mentioned it there. Rodri, his absence was huge earlier on the season. He's back for this one. Really looking forward to his head-to-head battle with Declan Rice in the engine room.
Yeah, I think also presuming we get a peak or close to peak Bukayo Saka is a big part of feeling this way. And obviously, he had to leave at the England camp with a minor injury, and I don't think there are expectations of anything less. But this is those games where those margins matter, right? It's not just being available; it's being at your best. No one's going to shirk the occasion. That's the exciting part. Every single one of these players has been in this situation. I love the idea of Arsenal seeing this as an opportunity, not just because of the injuries, but because they need to be beaten for Man City to this is a must win for Man City at home. And I think it's interesting to see how both sides react, because I don't expect either to be timid. And I don't know who that favors. Probably Arsenal a little bit. I don't think it favors them necessarily to win the game, but if either side if both sides are going for it, then I think Andy's right. Man City's the one who's putting themselves more at risk.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously a few injury notes on Arsenal, like you mentioned, Nick Saka, Gabriel Martinelli had knocks over the international break. It seems like that trio are all going to be available for this weekend. So that's a big boost for Arsenal, who are pretty much at full strength compared to City, having all those question marks over some key players. So definitely favours Arsenal in terms of the players they have available and who they can put out there from the start. I'm intrigued to see if Jorginho starts this game as well, just to give him a bit more control in midfield, I think, especially when Rodri's there. His scrap against Declan Rice will be epic. But then if you've got Odegaard and Jorginho alongside him, and Kovacic is a fine player, but I don't think he can really play the John Stones role, and nobody can really play the John Stones role because it's a very unique one. So I feel like Arsenal may have the edge there, and wouldn't be surprised if Jorginho starts in midfield once again, because he's been a really calming influence. He's won so much, and you can just see that maturity growing through this Arsenal team. And I have to say, this season, been around them a lot in big games, and there is just a confidence compared to this time last season, and almost the relaxation that they've already gone through that in the title race, and now they know what's expected. So, just get a good vibe about this Arsenal team right now around these games. But saying that, City going for 4 Premier League titles in a row, unprecedented. They're doing that for a reason. And if De Bruyne is fit, him and Haaland through the middle last season when they did beat Arsenal 4-1 in that critical game in April, just destroyed them. And Andy, I wonder if that is going to be key to Man City's approach in this one. It's almost bypassing that midfield for Arsenal and trying to get Foden, Bernardo Silva around Haaland centrally, quickly, as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's going to be difficult because of what's happening a little bit deeper in midfield and I guess along the back line as well. And all the names, I'm looking here at the team for City that played against Liverpool a couple weeks ago now. We're talking about Ederson, Kyle Walker, Manuel Akanji, John Stones. Those 4 players on the field as the game is playing out, very connected to one another, very close to one another, like playing the ball to and off of one another, rotating defensively and covering spaces for each other. There's just such a level of understanding that's required to play the way that City do, and that's why it takes time, and that's why it takes the best players in the world, the smartest players in the world, to understand the Pep way, and all of those guys are integral parts of that system for this team. And I do worry about, if De Bruyne does play, how deep he would have to drop and defend Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva, how much is going to be taken away from the attacking part of the game, and they're going to have to track back and do some of that dirty work just to keep Arsenal at bay, just to keep themselves on level footing. So, yeah, the more that we talk about this, and I know we'll finish with predictions here, I'll just say it. I'm going to go with Arsenal in this one. I don't think it's going to be easy or straightforward, but they're going to be demonstrably, I think, the better looking team on the field in this game, just due to the availability of City players. And that might be a shock to the system, to just the instincts of watching the Premier League the last 5 or 10 years. But I think that's what it's going to be. I'll go Arsenal 2-1 in the end.
Wow. Nick, I'm going for a 2-2 draw. I just think this is one of those games where it's going to be back and forward, like you mentioned, but I just think Arsenal will dig in and get the goals and the chances they need. And I just think City will be really impacted by these absentees if as many players are going to be out as we think they are. So that's what I'm going for. What about you?
Guys, I'm picking Man City, and I'm picking Man City 2-1. I think Ortega is I worry about him as a shot stopper. I don't worry about him in possession. I think that's one of the reasons that he's there is because there's not a big drop off there. There's part of me saying Arsenal won the Community Shield in penalties. They won at home. Does Man City lose to the same team 3 times in 1 year? Does Erling Haaland stay cold? Does Rodri not take a game in that way? Does Foden, as good as he's looked, fail to show up at home in front of their own? There's just too much for me. I get everything you guys are saying, but there's too much for me to bet against the 3-time champs. So I'm going to say 2-1 to Man City.
Well, that's fair enough. It's going to be a great one. Man City against Arsenal at the Etihad this weekend. I'll be there for Pro Soccer Talk, reporting from the biggest game of the season in the title race. Going to be massive. Head over to PST for all the latest on Man City Arsenal. It's going to be a beauty.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.